Oh, hi. Thanks for joining us for Special Report Online. I'm Brett Baer. If this is your first time aboard, welcome. Different forum. Continue the conversation with our panel. We want to hear from you, so type in, ask questions, comments, whatever. We'll get it in there as fast as we can. Charlie Hurt is here, A.B. Stoddard, and Charles Krauthammer. I want to start with the election and where things stand. You know, this is Wednesday, A.B., and it's not been a good week for Hillary Clinton.
No.
I mean,
no.
Probably the worst week so far. Would you say that?
Yeah. I think that it's so interesting. Politico had a piece today saying that she's going to double down and not give any more interviews, and it's no big deal. All the foundation revelations, new emails bursting out of nowhere, and she just doesn't think she's done much wrong. She has such a weak opponent that she can actually run out the clock on all of this swirling scandal and prevail. And I think it's a risky strategy. I think that if Donald Trump controls himself while more emails come out, and they absolutely will, not only will the State Department, I think, be under tremendous pressure to get them out before, even though they're good at stonewalling before the election, there's a very good chance of another leak from who knows who, WikiLeaks or Guccifer, or so. I think it's the fact that she's kind of just going to wish it away is really a mistake.
And I've said this before, but I've talked to a number of Democrats who feel this sword of Damocles over this race. Yeah. They want to be celebratory that she's leading by so much in swing states where she shouldn't be because she's not a great candidate, but they are very wary of where they are.
But the other side of it is the fact that, you know, she is a terrible candidate. She has a long history, a lot of baked-in negatives, huge negatives, even though she was once First Lady, which the First Ladies are always very popular. And then you have these amazing revelations with the emails, and I think A.B.'s right, more will come out. And yet she's still doing astonishingly well, and part of that has to do with the fact that Donald Trump has committed some unforced errors, but it's also, I think, a reflection of the fact that a lot of her voters are going to vote for her no matter what. And to me, I see it as a rejection of the system as it is right now on both sides, because people don't care. They're just that's her team, that's their team. They're going to vote for that no matter what. And Donald Trump, it's the same for Donald Trump. Although I think his core is smaller than her core.
You know, Charles. First of all, Paul Joseph 88K says, "I'm just here hoping that Dr. K will quote some classic rock lyrics."
Yeah, I need Rosen to provoke me.
To provoke.
I have gone through a few Stones titles, which I'm ready to deploy, but like Trump, I don't want to give it away.
Right, it has to be.
Are there any classic platypus songs?
By the way, we're still getting the platypus is getting a lot of.
It gets kind of weird out here. We've been at this for a year and 2 months, and it's surprising that we're still half sane.
I wanted to ask you this: so the Clinton team pushed back hard against this AP story about the percentages of people who met with her who donated to the Clinton Foundation, and they were pushing back essentially on the math. The AP comes out with a response to the pushback today, and I'm just going to read it, and then you can respond to it. The Associated Press reporting relied on publicly available data provided by the State Department about Hillary Clinton's meetings, phone calls, and emails, cross-referenced against donor information provided by the Clinton Foundation and its related charities on its websites. As AP wrote, our reporting was based on Mrs. Clinton's calendars covering the entirety of her tenure as Secretary of State and on more detailed schedules of meetings and phone calls covering roughly half of that period. AP first requested Mrs. Clinton's calendars and schedules in 2010 and again in 2013, but was unsuccessful. AP then sued the State Department in federal court to obtain the schedules it has received so far. AP expects to receive the remaining files before Election Day and will continue to examine them and report on their contents. AP has been transparent in how it has reported this story. It focused on Mrs. Clinton's meetings and calls involving people outside government who were not federal employees or foreign diplomats, because meeting with the U.S. or foreign government officials would inherently have been part of her job as Secretary Secretary of State. We focused on Mrs. Clinton's meetings and calls involving those people outside her duties as Secretary of State whom she chose to include in her busy schedule. This reporting was done by the same AP investigative team that discovered Mrs. Clinton's private email server and traced it back to her basement in Chappaqua, New York, and whose reporting last week resulted in the resignation of Donald Trump's top campaign strategist. AP has been examining issues facing the presidential candidates and will continue to do so. You don't want to piss off the AP.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a pretty pointed...
and it's so Clintonian that they spend 4 years trying to deny the AP the information and then complain that she only has half of it. I mean, isn't that perfect?
Yeah.
Where's the other stuff? Well, if you hadn't withheld it since 2010, we might have had it. And the point is, of course, she's going to be meeting with lots of people as part of her duties, officials. You don't count that. What you count is what's outside that. And what percentage of those, it's more than half, were people who are donors, which means this is more than an amazing coincidence. I mean, it's as much a coincidence as the arrival of the cash in Tehran with the release of the hostages. I mean, what we were just discussing in the break a little while ago, what's amazing today is the shamelessness with which people lie and make stuff up. You can start with the president, who pretends we weren't able to wire the money when we did 2 days later. We get the Clintons pretending that the information was wrong when they were withholding it. It was the best information available. You get it with Donald Trump, who will tell us, I am sure, that he never intended from the beginning to do a deportation of force when we have it all on tape. We have stuff on tape, and people just shamelessly deny. And you've got to ask yourself, have we gone mad, or has the whole system sort of accommodated a new level of non-reality?
Well, that is the question. I mean, we have videotape. All these leaders, all these political people have to know that, but it is a time in which it seems that they think that they can just kind of plow through it and look over here at the shiny thing and look over here and just forget it. Right? I mean, is that what we are?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think Donald Trump Clinton has always deflected, defiantly denounced, doubled down, and lied when she's surrounded by a scandal in which, particularly when it's not just her husband's, but in which she's complicit. And she does it, and her ambition and her grit has driven her through it. Donald Trump will lie about breakfast. I mean, it's almost like he doesn't know he's doing it. It's not usually about something that he's gotten in trouble over. It's just about anything. But it is really particularly upsetting in these last couple months. We talked about this in the panel discussion about what's happening, about revelations with the Obama administration about our security, our deteriorating security situation, deteriorating intelligence, credibility around the world, alliances, and what it's going to leave for the next president. Because we're so consumed with this presidential race where they never discuss any of it. Obama gets away with all this stuff that really matters and will matter more next year. And Hillary and Trump don't talk about it.
What just happened today? These Iranian provocation, the confirmation by the UN that in fact Syria has been using chemical weapons definitively. North Korea firing a missile that could reach our base in Okinawa from a submarine because they feel empowered and not pushed back in any way, shape, or form. China continuing in the South China Sea. Right. Russia emboldened in Ukraine. I mean, you go around the world, there's a lot of stuff happening.
Yeah, and in the case with Turkey, this was supposed to be a big success for President Obama. He had aligned himself with Erdogan very early on, and this was one of our most important Muslim allies in the region. And not only has he not successfully converted that relationship into a robust war against ISIS, but he's now chased him into the arms of Putin to the point that he has to send his vice president over to sort of beg and plead with them that we had nothing to do with this supposed coup. But I really do think that what we were just talking about, what Charles brought up, talking about the lying, has made the opening that Donald Trump has risen through. people don't trust any of these people. They don't trust Republicans. They don't trust Democrats. And Donald Trump came out and took on Republicans and then took on Democrats. And everyone was his enemy. And this was a huge success for him. The thing that has sort of helped him along is that, the Clintons are calculated strategic liars. Donald Trump is kind of a BSer. He's always BSing about stuff. Oh, yeah, I know Putin. Or when it turns out that he shouldn't know Putin, no, I don't know Putin. He just says things the way that, they kind of come off. And people, I think people forgive him for a lot of those things, partly because they think everybody else is lying all the time. And so I think I think that whatever happens at the end of this election, hopefully American voters and politicians in both parties will sit down and realize that they have really, really screwed things up, and it's time to get serious.
So what Trump has going for him most is the electorate, which is just so tired of both parties, so anti-establishment fueled, that Hillary Clinton is the ultimate in establishment. I mean, she's the ultimate establishment figure.
Well, he picked the right card. If he had to choose his opponent, he got what is without a doubt one of the weaker, maybe the weakest Democrat to run in 20, 30 years. Just inherently as a campaigner, she has unbelievable baggage. Think of this. William Safire, the great columnist for the New York Times, called her in print in a column 20 years ago a congenital liar. I mean, that's a long record of lying. And then he had this wonderfully funny column the week after explaining that he probably was slightly off with the congenital part, but she surely is a liar. I mean, this is such a long history of this. So he draws somebody who inherently draws mistrust, nobody trusts, highest negatives except for him. And I think what he's doing right now, I would say, is exactly the right thing. Stay on Hillary, don't move, don't talk about yourself. Try to strike the word I from any of your speeches. And if you can stay on that with the stories coming out and the emails, you talked about the sword of Damocles. I mean, imagine what it's like to be a Democrat. You're all in on this. There's nowhere else to go. You are stuck with her. And you know that between now and November 8th, there is stuff out there that other people have seen that they're going to drop strategically. Who knows how bad it is. But it's going to be, at least to some extent, bad. And you are powerless to do anything about it. You've got to wait and get ready to fend it off. And if you are Trump, as long as the story isn't on you, that's hard for him to take. But if you can just tolerate a few days where the story is her, if the story is her, she's losing.
I've said this before, but last cycle, Republicans put forward Mitt Romney in a cycle where arguably Obamacare and its falling apart was the biggest thing Republicans had against Democrats. They put forward Romney, who had Romneycare,
right,
who could not attack on Obamacare. Right. Now, the biggest vulnerability for Hillary Clinton is honest and trustworthy. And Republicans put forward a guy whose honest and trustworthy numbers in some polls
hers in some polls,
are more than that.
Do you know how hard it is to find in a country of 300 million the one guy who can't run against Obamacare?
But that's
the two most unpopular.
This is hard work, and the GOP can do it.
That said, Donald Trump could still win.
Oh, he absolutely can still win.
All these people say it's over or something.
No,
it's not over.
No,
there are 75 days that things can change dramatically.
The thing is about Hillary Clinton is it's Donald Trump's, I think, has a ceiling, and I don't think he's ever going to make it to 50%. But Donald Trump doesn't have to because there's spoiler candidates in the race. And he's really going to get, I think some of the vote. You see Utah now back safely in Trump's column because of the spoiler votes that would go to Hillary, whereas she was in contention there a month ago. So
when you're talking about
Evan McMullin and Gary Johnson, they both have good solid vote that adds up to, I think, almost 24, which is her vote, and then Donald Trump's in the 30s there. So if you look at that kind of equation and you look at the fact that he doesn't have to get to 50, and her vote is so easy to depress. There's so many many people now that are telling pollsters they're going to vote for her, and they enthusiastically support her because he's so risky and scary. And if he calms that down, and people who are never going to vote for him just stay home and don't vote for her, he depresses her numbers, and he can win on the margins with the spoiler candidates.
Which is why, Charlie, that she is running, and her campaign is running tons of ads that are all one topic.
Yeah.
Temperament, tone, Trump.
Yeah. And obviously it works, and it gets our attention. I don't know how well that works out in the rest of America, where they don't think much of temperament of politicians in Washington anyway. But wouldn't it be sweet justice if Hillary Clinton were denied the presidency by a minority with somebody winning with less than 50%, just as her husband did twice?
Mm-hmm. Ross Perot got 19% of the vote, and Bill Clinton, I think, was at 43.
Yeah.
And then just below 48, something like that, in what do you read?
In
96.
Yeah.
Talking about the shiny thing that politicians use, Indie Farmer writes, "I've seen so many shiny things, I need shades." There's a lot.
Good.
Yeah. Save that one. In the Senate landscape, I did this thing, if it were held today, it would roughly be a pickup for Democrats of 4 seats.
Yeah.
You extrapolate out the ticket and how the top of the ticket does. The Senate is hanging in the balance. I mean, it's clearly there for Democrats.
Yeah, and Republicans know that. And as we've read and heard from people that we've been speaking to these last couple of weeks, there is pressure on the RNC to dump this resource support for Trump and really move to save if his numbers don't improve, and really move to save the Senate candidates.
So in 96, it was October 1st that the RNC decided they were going to dump Bob Dole. And because the numbers looked upside down,
right,
and they moved everything to the races, the congressional races, and they succeeded.
And he kind of acquiesced. I mean, I'm serious. He was a good soldier. He knew he had no chance, and he sort of said, "Okay," he wasn't going to demand the attention and the money, and that's sort of Bob Dole, the good soldier. I don't think it's going to happen this time, and I'm not sure what kind of what will be the political effect if the RNC, either quietly or loudly, but it will get out, were to make the break, within a couple of weeks of the election. The support for Trump in the party is very fervent. May not be a majority, but it's near a majority. And that would, I think, it could really make people stay home. And it could backfire. So I'm not even sure that's going to work in the end.
Yeah, Charlie. I mean, you look. What about ticket splitting this year? I mean, we've seen it. It doesn't, like somebody who could vote for Hillary Clinton but vote for Kelly Ayotte or Pat Toomey or Rob Portman.
Yeah, the ticket splitting is always sort of it's kind of like Sasquatch. Everybody talks about it, but it's never really materialized in recent elections. But I do think that you could, like Charles said, a lot of people would very possibly stay home, and that would backfire. But the problem for Donald Trump is that he has nothing. Bob Dole had something that he wanted to preserve. He wanted to preserve his party, and so it was very easy for him to go along with that. Donald Trump is not. There's nothing here that Donald Trump wants to preserve. In fact, he's gotten where he is because he wants to do the opposite of preserve anything. And so I suspect if that were to happen, we would probably hear words like rigged and
sabotage.
But isn't it something that here's the guy that they've chosen to be the CEO of his campaign, Steve Bannon, who has cozied up to this alt-right. He has professed that he wants to take down the Republican establishment. He wants to take it down. He got rid of Eric Cantor. He was part of the big push for that. Took down John Boehner, essentially. Right. Tried to take down Paul Ryan. And now here's the guy that the Republican leadership has to work with on this election if they're going to work over the next 75 days together.
It's one of the few sort of bright spots in the whole election that people are being forced to work with one another, strange bedfellows. But that's why I very much took the decision to put Steve Bannon at the top of the campaign as a double down by Trump on his message, because his message, rightly or wrongly, you might like him or dislike him. The bottom line is that very few people were tuned into how the sentiment of the vast or the majority of Republican electorate out there, and a lot of non-Republicans as well. But Donald Trump understood it sort of intrinsically, and so did Steve Bannon, and So I'm sort of puzzled how we're now talking. What led Trump to make the comments to Hannity last night about softening his immigration stance, about the what to do with the 11 million illegals here now. It makes me wonder if he didn't just sort of misspeak or something.
Say it off the cuff, but we've been covering it for a number of days where he's
he used the exact word that Kellyanne Conway had used that said is not happening. It was the exact word. So much of Trump's success is based on the fact that he is so imprecise, and he uses imprecise language, partly, I think, to drive people in the media absolutely mad, and he's very successful at it. But you can't say this was a lack of precision. This was the exact word that Kellyanne Conway had said.
Kellyanne Conway is one type of Republican, and she is doing an outreach to independents and moderates. It seems that she's steering that ship. Steve Bannon is another. And you can't think that Steve Bannon is all for this softening of immigration stance?
This is a Kellyanne Conway strategy. This is not a Bannon strategy, which makes the twin appointments that were puzzling on the day, they remain puzzling. They're diametrically opposed. And I think what Trump is doing is by sort of softening. I don't think he's using strategic and precision. Eisenhower did. He spoke deliberately with a syntax that was incomprehensible because he intended no one, particularly adversaries abroad, to understand a word he said, and people imputed, thought he was senile or had a heart condition. Actually, it was a form of brilliance. With Trump, I do believe he's imprecise accidentally. That's the way he talks, the way he thinks. He comes out with ideas on the tip of his tongue, or as soon as they occur to him, and he's not, let's just say this plainly, he's not a systematic thinker. So I don't think he's planning this. I think his strategy is to go soft on immigration, thinking that's going to be the way that he can win, can thread the needle in these swing states, and that's what he may have decided to do. But I don't think he's sort of stumbling about here. I think his idea is to try to change course and deny he's changing course.
All right, we got to wrap up early because Charlie's got an FBM hit. But Terry, MD, says the reason why Trump is up there is because the Republicans have been a terrible opposition party against Obama. Do you think, AB, quickly, that Ted Cruz is saying, I told you so about this evolution on this issue? And is he somebody that's somehow going to show up here at the end of this race?
I think knowing Ted Cruz, his style, he's definitely saying, I told you so. But it's very interesting that he's deliberately stayed very quiet and in retreat. And I think he's going to choose his time wisely to come back out and say, I told you not to nominate Donald Trump. I don't think it'll be before November 8th.
No chance, Charlie, that he comes out and says, you know what, we need to get behind Trump because Clinton is too bad.
No, I think he'll step out of the way, and I also don't. It would be unwise for him to go in and try to sabotage it at the end, not because he might not be right about it or be on the right side of things in the end, but because it's just such a terrible political. People have a hard time liking him to begin with, and it's antics like this that make people like him less.
No, but you were asking about the endorsement, right?
Yeah, I'm saying the other way.
I don't think he's going to endorse Donald Trump.
No. I agree. I don't think he will.
Look, he took his shot in Cleveland. Yeah. He made the point. I think he's very smart strategically. Don't say a word between now and Election Day, because otherwise you'll be accused of the stab in the back. And if the Republicans lose, he'll be to blame. This way, he says, I told you so at the last moment, and after that I stayed silent. And if he's going to run in 2020, which is exactly what he's doing as of today, that's the strategy you'd want to follow.
All right, panel, thank you very much. Thank you for joining us for Special Report Online. We'll see you next Wednesday. Control Room, a little goodbye.